Earlier this morning, Canon released the first firmware update for the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. But it wasn't the only Canon camera to get an update. Canon released an update for the R5 Mark I, the R6, the R6 Mark II, the R8, the R3, the R10, the R50, and the R100. Do all these updates have something in common, or is each camera getting its own tailored update? But before we get to the details, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, helps this channel grow, and keeps you up to date on the latest camera coverage. Earlier this morning when I published the video about the firmware updates for the R5 Mark II, amongst other Canon cameras, many people said, I can't find the firmware update, it's not at Canon USA. And it wasn't. At the time, the only place you could download the firmware updates were at Canon India. And I do have links to that down in the description down below if by the time you're watching this video, we still don't have the firmware updates. So this video is all about the updates we got to the other cameras, the R5, the R6, the R6 Mark II, the whole list including, what was it, the R50, the R100, the R10, and the R3. So the big question you might be asking, as I was, why are we getting so many firmware updates? Do they have something in common? And the simple answer is, yes they do. Each camera now supports the new LP E6P battery, at least if you can find them. This also makes it possible to be able to shoot at the same continuous shooting speed as when shooting with the LP E6NH. And in-camera charging is also possible now with the LP E6P battery. Number 2, it adds the enhancement of protected images and rating during FDP transfer. And the last fix announced by Canon today that's pretty common in most of the cameras, it fixes an issue in which error 70 occurs when Wi-Fi is disconnected. And this strange one, it fixes this issue in which when shooting subjects that are smaller in the frame, the card access indicator blinks and operations can no longer be performed. And lastly, it fixes an issue in which when performing shooting at high-speed continuous, with high tone priority option set to on, focus may not be achieved when certain ISO speed settings are used. And I think that last one is a problem that I encountered when I was shooting a fire department open house last weekend. With the 100 to 500, relatively close up with certain settings, I found that whether I powered the camera on or off, it just didn't seem to want to adjust focus. So I'm glad to see that one's fixed. Now you might already be commenting and saying, Simon, no, wait a minute. There's no support for the LP E6 battery in all of these cameras. And that's true. Obviously the R100 has a smaller battery. So unless God forbid you're using a hammer to try and bash that thing in there, it's not going to fit. And if you try to put the LP E6P battery inside the R3, well, you'll get it in there, but it's going to bounce around and not do anything for you because those two cameras have different sized batteries. But the R50 did receive some love that the other cameras didn't. It adds the ability to select WPA2 and WPA3 as a secure protocol, and it adds support for the Software Development Assistant Kit. So please, I'm not trying to ham things up for the cameras for the video. While most Canon firmware updates go quite well, as I indicated a little while ago, sometimes things can go sideways. Now, even with Canon, when things go sideways, a firmware update is usually released a few days later. But the problem is, if this is your production camera and you start to interject new, how shall we say, inconsistencies in your camera, and that causes you to lose shots, to me, that's an awfully high risk to take. The probability, well, the impact, forget the probability, but the impact is rather large. So what I recommend doing is wait a week or two. I've already applied the firmware update to my R5 Mark II. Follow me on X, follow me on YouTube. So that way, if I encounter any issues with the R5 Mark II, I'll keep you up to date. But also follow the message boards, the forums, because any sort of hint of an update that's gone wrong, well, it's going to rapidly show up. For the R50, the R5, the R8, R10, whatever it is, that's the best thing to do. And if you can wait a week or two, just wait a week or two. I mean, after all, we've waited a month since they started shipping the R5 Mark II to be able to apply the firmware update. So what's another week or two, right? Just, I've been there, and whether it's appliances, cameras, televisions, computers, It's always better to wait because while camera companies do test things, essentially, once they release a firmware update, you're that last final stage of testing, widespread distribution, and issues get reported in. And firmware updates not only fix and enhance your product, but they do add additional issues. So you've been warned. I'm just saying. I had a few comments before that got a little nasty saying, oh, this is nonsense, you're just hyping things up. I'm not. And if you're my age, I can guarantee you've been through at least one situation on a car, computer, camera, whatever it is, where either it bricked, was costly, or impacted your daily workflow. But now I want to say a special thanks to everybody that's tuned in, that's been following this channel. It's very much appreciated. And for the R5 Mark II, if you haven't bought it yet, and you've been waiting and you're hoping you don't have to wait 6 months, I've got some really good news. At B&H, they now have a fresh batch in stock. It's a limited quantity, so if you're interested in purchasing the R5 Mark II, use my links down below. It doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to put in any codes or fill out any forms, although I do get a small commission back of anywhere from 2 to 3%. But I want to say a special thanks for those of you that have used the links, because it's why this channel's on the air. I get far more revenue from affiliate links and pre-order links, and right now there's, I think, some 20 to 30 different cameras and lenses on sale for Canon and Nikon. They're in the description down below. Huge amount of sales, and you know, your support for this channel is very much appreciated. And it's not just in the pre-orders and the affiliate links, it's also from building a community. After the video's published, I go in and I comment for a little while, but I also go in hours later. I look at the comments, I participate. I love to see threads where you're having a conversation and discussion with each other. And the only time I ever delete comments if people are getting toxic, they're just being rude, they're calling people names. I have no problem if you think the Sony a7S III or the R5 II is the best camera and you want to have a discussion about that. But to call people names and say they're idiots because they don't like what you like, that's the type of community I'm not interested in building. I want to build a community that's intelligent, that asks questions, answers questions, supports each other. Because outside of this video, there's a wealth of very knowledgeable and professional people in the comment section that are reading, listening, responding, and asking questions. But as we approach the weekend here, I want to say a special thanks for tuning in. Have yourself a great weekend. Have yourself a great week next week. October should offer us a whole bunch of new cameras. And with a holiday on Monday, at least here in Ontario, I'm looking forward to a 3-day weekend where I'm going to get out and shoot more with the R5 Mark II and, you know, give it a bit of a shakedown and see if I find any new issues with the camera. But at least 2 of my issues have been fixed. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Cheers, have a good day, and we'll see you again soon.